Hey everyone, this is Jyotika and welcome to your 6th HTML5 tutorial. In my previous videos, we took an in-depth look at what goes in the head element of our page. Now we are going to understand about what goes in the body element, which is the displayable part of our web page. So in order to understand the different elements that go in the body, today we are finally going to dive in and create a simple web page like this. Maybe about our favorite things. And we are going to be creating that by using some of the newer HTML5 tags that are also referred to as semantic tags. But before we begin talking about specific tags, I want you all to think about the design of your web page. The most important step in your web design is the design. Once you are sure of what content you want on your page, you might want to change your focus to how you want to lay out your page. You need a really clear picture of what you want to create before you can begin coding. So let's take a look at this sample page. It's just a quick sketch and it shows that I would like to have a heading and links section, a place for my contact and copyright info, and a few other sections embedded in between the two of them. Once I know that that's the kind of design I want, I can begin coding. You may recall I mentioned in my previous videos that we should try to use the most meaningful tags for our content and try to avoid the very generic div tag for every part of our page. So in HTML5, there are 6 major elements that can be used to make up the overall structure of the page in the body. They are the header, main, article, section, aside, and footer elements. They all are just structural elements and are used to group together other elements inside them. They don't actually impart any formatting like boldness or different font sizes to your content. But they are all semantic and convey the users and developers the meaning of the content they hold. Also, I want you all to know that using these structural elements is just a good way of writing code. It's not a hard and fast rule. Your pages will still display well even if you don't use all these tags. So don't get too stuck up on whether you use the right tag somewhere or not. Always use your own best judgment to use any tag you feel is the most appropriate for your content. So let's start building our page now. I have already created this basic structure of HTML in my Sublime text editor and saved the file as index.html. Why index.html? Because it's always necessary to save the first page of your site as index.html, as that's what the browser will look for first and display as the first page of your site. So always start with index.html. Now let's have a look at the header tag. It usually contains introductory content, the main heading of your page or heading of an article on a page, a logo, search form, navigational links, an author name, and other elements. Anything that lets the user know right off the bat what this page or section is about. You can have several header elements in one HTML document. However, header cannot be placed within a footer, address, or another header element. So let's begin constructing our page by creating a header tag inside the body element. Now this header tag shouldn't be confused with a heading. Header is just a container to group all your introductory content together in a meaningful section. And as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't really give any formatting to your text. So if I write something inside it like my favorite things, it just becomes some text in the header as you can see in the browser. If I want this to be a heading, then I have to go ahead and put this text in another element, for example a h1, which is a heading 1 element. And you can see how it immediately became big and bold here in the browser. Now there are 6 heading elements in HTML, starting from h1 all the way till h6. Let me quickly show you that. And they are all semantic. The H1 stands for the most important heading of the page, and H2 is the subtitle, less important than H1. H3 is the subtitle, and so on. But another thing to remember here is not to use the different headings randomly for their font size, as they all have a specific meaning. If you want a particular size for your headings, then the styling can be done using CSS, about which we will learn in future tutorials. So for now, let's just keep the H1 tag as it's the main title of our page. Like I mentioned earlier, there are many other things like logo and links that can go in the header. But today we will just put this heading and we will add more things here eventually as we progress ahead. Now let's see what I want next. Maybe on this page I want all my favorite foods. And probably in future I would like to have more pages to my site with my favorite animals or favorite movies. So since I want this entire page about food, let me go ahead and create a main element outside our header element. The main element in HTML specifies the main content of the page. The content inside the main element should be unique to the document. It should not contain any content that is repeated across documents such as sidebars, navigation links, copyright information, site logos, and search forms. Also, there must not be more than one main element in a document. The main element must not be written inside an article, aside, footer, or a header element. So let's put our second heading H2 favorite food in the main element. Great! So now we have our header and main part on the page. Now let's move on to putting down our favorite foods. Let me create two more headings, this time H3, in this main element and put my favorite foods in there. So I like chocolate cake and ramen. And you know what? I want to put down my favorite recipes of them as well. So let me do that by first creating two paragraphs for each of the recipes. A paragraph is created using the P element. Now just for the purpose of saving time, I will put some placeholder text in these paragraphs like this. Just type lorem and press the tab key. And there are my recipes. Now if you look at it logically, then this top part is about chocolate cake and this part is about ramen, and they both are independent topics on their own. So in HTML5 we have this article element which can be used here. An article element is wrapped around any instance of an article. A long written essay or blog post, a very short snippet or a teaser card can all be marked up as an article element. A tweet or social media post can also be an article. An article should make sense on its own and it should be possible to distribute it independently from the rest of the site. The article element just means, hey, this by itself, this is a unit of content. Consider this something that stands on its own as a useful or usable thing. So let's put these two parts inside two article elements. Make sure to include the closing paragraph tags of the recipes before closing your article element. Now let's see, I want to add some more to my cake and ramen articles. Maybe I want to add their histories. So let me create additional paragraphs in both these articles and write the food histories in it. I'm also going to add headings H4 at this point to let us know that this paragraph is a recipe and this one is a history. So if you look at these articles now, you can immediately see that they have two separate sections inside of them, recipe and history. So we can put these recipe and history sections in an HTML5 element simply referred to as the section element. A section element is used to wrap around sections of content. If we have a long essay or a write-up like this, for instance, that's broken up into chunks with sub-headlines, then we can use the section element to mark each segment. Or we may have zones on our website, a section towards the top that's about one topic and another section further down that's about something else. Section is a flexible element. That means, okay, let's just start with another thing. Usually, each section has its own headline marking the start of a new segment of content. So let me go ahead and put our recipes and histories, including their titles, in the section element. Now I want to add some trivia to our chocolate cakes history section. Something like chocolate is made from cocoa beans. So let me put that in this section in another paragraph. But I feel like this line is not really in the flow of this history section, but it is still relevant to it. So I can keep it in this section but place it a little separately in an element called aside, which we can create right here in this section and wrap it around our trivia paragraph. We can also give a heading to this trivia paragraph. Aside element is for marking something that's off to the side, perhaps in a sidebar or any content that's kind of not the main attraction of the site. But the aside content should be indirectly related to the surrounding content. It could be an inset panel like our example that goes with a big article giving additional information, but isn't quite part of the flow of the article itself. Or advertisements. They are also a side thing, perhaps best marked as an aside. Again, it's the semantic meaning that matters here, not the position on the page. So you can very well put an aside element at the top or bottom or right in the middle of your content too, and maybe style it differently than the rest of your content in CSS to let everyone know that this is some extra information. So most of our page is done now. But in the end, I would also like to add my copyright info. So that's where the footer element comes in. A footer element typically contains authorship, copyright, and contact information. It could also contain the back to the top links, social media links, and any related documents. You can have several footer elements in one document, and they need not be all at the bottom of the page. You can place footers and even a header element anywhere in the document. Again, it's not the positioning, but the semantics that count with regards to all these elements. So let me create a footer element towards the end here, still inside the body but separately from the rest of the elements. And then let's create a paragraph in the footer to hold the copyright info. Save and refresh the browser. So yeah, our web page is done. If you look in the browser, it looks really simple now, but we will slowly edit and add on to it to make it more interesting as we learn more and more elements. Again, using all these 6 structural elements that we learned today is just a good way of writing code. It's not a strict rule. So do what you feel is best for your content and always look up if you get confused. Sometimes I just go to any website which I trust and right-click and inspect the site and browse through the developer tools to see how they have used different elements to build their site. It's a great way to learn from other developers. Now let's quickly review. When you start constructing a web page, always think of the content first and then make a note of how you want to lay out your content on the page. Then think of the most meaningful tags that you can use to develop your layout. The 6 major structural and semantic elements in HTML5 to build your web page are the main, header, article, section, aside, and footer elements. The main element is used once per page to wrap around the main content on that page. The header, footer, article, section, and aside elements are the 5 sectioning elements in HTML. They all are used together, nested inside of each other, in patterns and combinations that give the content of a web page its true structure. And that's it for today. I've put a link to the web page and the code in the description below, so do check it out. Also, let me know in the comments if you have any questions. This is Jyotika signing off. Until next time, keep learning and keep coding.